Perfect.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and admit everybody.
All right, so I'll go ahead and get started. I know some people might still be connecting with audio, but I just wanted to say hello to everyone. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces and names, and also to see a lot of new faces and names. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I'm Peggy Kuiper. I'm the Director of Sport and Recreation Business at UAF in the School of Management, and an Associate Professor in the School of Management as well. And I simply wanted to give a short welcome. We're very happy to have everybody here today, and we're going to get started right on time. And I also wanted to say thank you to Michelle Spencer and also Dean Mark Herman. Michelle is, you'll find out a lot about her background, but she's an adjunct within our faculty, within our program, and she's just an all-around rock star in the sports business world, as well as, and people are shaking their head that know her because she is. And she's just been awesome about setting up this series for us. Spencer is a student marketing assistant for me, and he also is a rock star and a real go-getter. He's really on top of what he does. So anybody that's looking to hire him in the future, hire him is what I'm getting at. And lastly, Mark, thanks for our dean, and many of you know who he is, but thank you for supporting. He's waving, and you see the hockey sticks in the background. He's a huge sports fan. But are really, really supportive of innovative ideas and initiatives, and thank you for supporting us. So I know Michelle has a full program and lineup, so without further ado, I'll let her take the lead. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Peggy, and thank you for the kind introduction. I certainly appreciate that. And I am super excited to just welcome you all to the kickoff of the Fall Speaker Series for the Sports Business Program. As Peggy alluded to, I am an adjunct at UAF, new to the family, so very excited to be able to meet you all over Zoom. But additionally, I am with the Dallas Cowboys, and I manage corporate partnerships on a team here in Dallas, Texas. And when I say that, it means that I work with brands like Pepsi or Tostitos or AT&T or Ford on their marketing strategy and how they can leverage the Cowboys platform in order to achieve their business objectives, which might be create buzz or drive sales. It could be a number of things. So to provide some context, that really is the crux of my role. And I know that we have an amazing panel lined up for you today to talk a little bit more about sports marketing, sports business in general, from a slew of different roles within sports business. So I don't want to take any more time because I'm super excited for Brett, Chris, and Solly to chat with you guys. So a few housekeeping rules at first. Please do keep your microphones muted so we don't get any feedback when we're chatting. Your video can be on or off. It's up to you guys. That's no problem for us. And then you can also use the chat box on the right side of your screen. If you go to the bottom and click chat, that will open up. Feel free to submit any questions in there. We'll have some time at the end for a Q&A. And we'll try and get to as many questions as possible. I know some of you submitted them on the front end, and some really great questions came through. So as the conversation goes on, please feel free to share any that you might be interested in hearing. So at this point, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves and just give a brief overview of what they do. And Brett, I will let you kick it off.
Thanks, Michelle. And Peggy, I can't echo it enough of what Michelle, a rock star, ever since the day I met her. So I'm happy to help you out anywhere I can, Michelle, and looking forward to seeing you doing incredible things in your career. So Brett Baur with Monumental Sports and Entertainment in Washington, D.C. We are the parent company best known for teams like the Washington Capitals, the Washington Wizards, the Washington Mystics, who were 2019 WNBA champs. And we have esports platforms, the Wizards District Gaming, which just won the 2K League championship. Caps Gaming, which is our esports NHL equivalent of the 2K League, if you want to think about it that way. And then we have a couple other media channels, properties out of home. So we're one of the larger sports entertainment families in the country, and we're really driven by innovation, technology, and business intelligence. So I'm coming up on a year with Monumental. Before that, I spent 4 seasons with the Pittsburgh Penguins, which was an awesome experience. And before that, I was in grad school at Ohio University, getting a dual MBA, MSA degree.
Awesome. Thanks, Brett. Chris, why don't you take it?
Sure. Chris Parker here. Also teach adjunct here in Alaska. Awesome group of people, awesome group of students. Spent the last 15 years in higher ed at many different capacities. I'm in my 4th year as president and CEO of the NJCAA, which is the country's 2nd largest intercollegiate athletic association. 60,000 student athletes, 52 national championships across 3 divisions, as well as the good old esports that we just talked about, growing exponentially. Love sharing the knowledge and giving back and paying it forward. So excited about being here with this awesome group of people tonight.
Thank you so much, Chris. And last but not least, Solly.
Yeah, this is awesome to be able to speak to fellow Native Alaskans. So most importantly, I was born and raised in Kodiak, Alaska. Never thought I would leave the state of Alaska and go to the lower 48. So all of you can appreciate that statement on the lower 48. But went to University of Oregon, was a student athlete for University of Oregon, and that really started my career in college athletics. I'm currently work for Learfield IMG College, and we manage, in my area, we manage 50 universities from Nebraska to Michigan to Ohio State for the East region. And it consists of sponsorship rights, multimedia rights. And as you can imagine, this is a wild time for college athletics. And throughout my career, I've been specifically in college athletics on the internal side as Associate AD, Deputy AD at Sacramento State, UC Berkeley. And I also teach a course on sports business and management at the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley. And it's just a privilege to be with all of you today. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I know I'm really excited to dive right in. So let's just hit the ground running. Solly, the first question I have for you, one, I think I can speak for everybody on here that we are too excited to have a native of Alaska on this call. And I know a little while ago, you and I spent some time just chatting about the importance of having a solid network when you have a career in the sports industry and really any business industry at all. Can you talk to us a little bit about how first impressions can parlay into building these meaningful and genuine relationships to help grow your network?
Yeah, there's a lot there, right? I think first impressions, in the class I teach with the students that I have at UC Berkeley, it's interesting, right? So my classes with students range from about 50 to 60 students every semester. And so I'll lecture for an hour and then I'll bring a guest speaker in from, the president of the Raiders to the 49ers to, just like we have today. And it's always interesting the extra effort that few take to engage and make that first impression. So we'll have the president of the Raiders that speaks to this group of students, and normally there's usually 3 or 4 students that wait at the end to introduce themselves after class is over. So I guess I share that story because in first impressions, making that extra effort is really, really important, and just taking action to do that. All of us have been in the position where you're trying to launch your career and people want to help. And I think having taking that action is really, really important. The other thing that I think is important is managing your personal brand and starting now to do inventory on what does your digital footprint look like? That's a first impression. How do you present yourself? You know, when you, what is your, do you have a headshot? Do you have a professional headshot on your LinkedIn? All those little details on how you represent yourself are part of your first impression. There's a book that I share with my students that Jeremy Darlow has written, and it's Athletes Are Brands Too, but it applies to every one of us on this call here, and making sure that you're paying attention to those details as you pursue a career in college sports, because relationships are the foundation for this industry. Everyone, if you value those and you put the extra effort in, really good things come from it. And so I don't know if any of that made sense, but that's my answer, Michelle.
Amen.
Michelle, I think
Michelle, you're on mute.
Mute.
It's my first video call. I think, one, a lot of what you said made sense. And I think the interesting point to me that stood out that is worth, I think, writing down is that first impressions have now evolved into your digital footprint. So your Twitter, your Instagram's not private, Facebook, whatever it looks like, because that's or your LinkedIn, you know, for professional connections. I think that's a really important point, Solly. And the other piece of that is when we talk about LinkedIn is making sure that it's completed. You know, you have your picture, you have descriptions, you have accurate information, because oftentimes, I know when we're hiring, that's the first thing that we look at when we're looking at potential candidates outside of resumes. So I think that's a great point. I think it's really important to make sure you maintain that and maintain your personal brand. And so folks know, you know, get a little bit of insight to your personality before they actually meet you, because cultural fit is really important, right?
Yeah, and I just add, it's the details of what your video backdrop looks like, right? I mean, all of you are making an assessment on me right now, and what do I have? And you see a cow skull in the back and a Michigan helmet and a photo of Muhammad Ali. Those are snapshots on who I am as a person, right? And I also have Kodiak, Alaska, the map of Kodiak, Alaska back there, which is very important to me. The state of Alaska in my hometown is very important. So how you position your brand, especially in this new environment that we're communicating in, it's all of that matters. So I think it's a great question.
Brett, Chris, would you like to add anything to that?
I think what he touched on, that first impression, you only get one chance. So, you know, be confident, be yourself, but be confident. Don't be scared. Don't be timid, but like truly be yourself, because that first impression is going to matter. I mean, I've hired thousands of people, and it matters.
Yeah, the only thing I would add onto that point, especially in a virtual environment, be intentional with everything that you're doing. And so I try to take webinars. I'm trying to be better at it. But when you're on this virtual setting and say you are meeting someone for the first time, looking into the camera, smiling, posture, all of that makes a huge difference to how engaged you are and how engaged it appears you are, right? We're talking about impressions. You need to have that impression that you're engaged in interacting with that person you're talking to. So exactly what your background, similar to you, Solly, I have some OVOs. I have a Wisconsin football helmet back here, a picture of my girlfriend and me in the parade. So I have clues and things that you can point out if you're talking to somebody, and to help build that relationship. But just be extremely intentional with everything. It's a theater, right? It's a play. Orchestrate the play that from your side on how you want to present yourself.
Definitely, the devil is in the details, certainly. And you know, when you were talking about the story when there are a couple students who hang after class to introduce themselves, like, I have been in the seat where you just finished, you know, a 2-hour lecture and you cannot wait to go get dinner or just go home and work on your paper that's due and not hang around. because it does make a difference, and it's only going to be 10-15-minute difference from when you get to do your next thing. But I've been in that seat where you just can't wait to, and I'm sure this doesn't happen with Sally's lectures because I'm sure they're amazing, but when you just can't wait to get back to working on your homework or getting something to eat. So I think it's a great piece of advice. So I think we could take a lot from that, learn a lot from those stories. And speaking of being in lectures together, Brett and I did go to grad school together, so we were sat in many lectures together. So we've known each other for a long time, and that's how I know that Brett is one of the best at making introductions for himself and for other people, but maybe even more importantly, maintaining those relationships and growing those introductions into relationships. So Brett, what are some strategies, tips, and tricks that you can share about maintaining a networking relationship?
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, and even how false some of them might be, but I do appreciate it. First, to kind of unpack the introduction piece, there's something that I really took away in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, especially when you're introducing other people on your team. I just think this is something I learned early. You're introducing people on your team, whether it's to a prospect or a partner or a client, a season ticket member. You want to build that person up in their eyes, especially if you have the relationship, as much as you can, right? It lends credibility to that person. If this person is an expert, strategic thinker, one of the best, visionary, super easygoing or understanding, empathetic, like build it up and make them seem bigger than they are sometimes. Because you want to be associated with that person. You want the person you're talking with, if you're making other introductions, to feel that same expertise, to feel that same warmth that they have with you. So I wanted to unpack that one just a little bit. But from a really relationship and a networking standpoint, a few of the tactics that I've used over the years, creating kind of a personal CRM system. So building out a simple Excel sheet with the industry contacts, the people that you interact with, the people that you meet day by day, week by week, and just making notes in about them. When's the last time you talked to them, texted them, whatever, and review it every weekly, bi-weekly. Is there a time where, hey, you just want to see what they're doing, see how they're, check in, give them a call. What are you working on? Be authentic in a relationship, and don't come just when you need something, I think is an important and critical piece that I've learned and have been taught down to me. If you show up just when you need a job or an interview, or when you're in sales, just when you're trying to sell something, it's a very one-way relationship. You need to make it 2 ways. So how can you help them? What can you do to help whatever they're working on, or to connect them with somebody in the industry or outside the industry that may know something or may know an opportunity for them, right? So you want to start to kind of build these differentiators and build these kind of competitive advantages, I call them, by doing these little things, staying on top of it, staying top of mind, and helping them outside of when you just need something. I really like, there's one really quick analogy, and it was taught to me at a younger age, and I really like it. Think about a relationship like a bank account. So you can't open a bank account and withdraw money right away. There's nothing in there. You have to invest in, you have to make deposits into a bank account. You need to make deposits into a relationship. So you have the right to withdraw at one point. So you have the right to ask for, hey, can I have a recommendation? Can I have a referral? Can I have a job interview? Can you help me with these things? And as I mentioned before, people are always willing to help, but you also need to think about a relationship, again, just like a bank account, and deposit enough so you can withdraw.
Yeah, Brett, I could not agree more. And, you sharing those things just makes me think of this saying that somebody had shared with me recently. And it was, you hear a lot of the time, prove people wrong. So if you think I can't do something, I'm going to go do it to prove you wrong. And there's really a mindset shift that needs to go with that. And instead of prove people wrong, work to prove people right. So if I ask Brett for an introduction to somebody, I know he's going to have his personal stamp on that, and I'm going to reflect him ultimately. And I'm going to prove him right, that he did the right thing, and by believing in me and knowing that I'm not going to give him a bad name. I'm going to be kind, and I'm going to work towards building a relationship if it's the right fit. So I think that's a really important piece. And the other piece you said, Brett, that I thought was really interesting was in the beginning of your answer when you talked about building people up a little bit to be bigger than they are. And I've never really intentionally thought about it. And I think it's really important. It gives people a sense of comfort that you care about them enough to place them in the right hands, or you care about them enough to give them X, Y, and Z connections. So great call out there. It's not something that I think people often intentionally think about.
Yeah, and think about it, what it does for the person you're introducing to whatever the relationship, the situation. Wow, they think that highly of me. They think that you automatically created a stronger connection with that person too. It works like us from a sales standpoint. When we introduce our partnership marketing or activation person on a sale, they're already in the best of hands. This person's this is going to be, okay, I feel really, really good about this investment I'm making. Similar in a personal and networking situation. You make the other person feel they're getting introduced to the best person possible. That's awesome. That's a great feeling.
Yeah, and I'd like to touch a little bit more on maintaining a network, because I think that's important. We got that question a couple times too when folks registered. So thank you for submitting some questions. But Chris and Sally, I'd love to hear from you a little bit about maintaining a network and how you guys handle that.
I mean, that spider web has to grow at all times. Those connectivities, they matter. The old adage with 7, you can connect over 7 times anywhere. I mean, you really can. No matter what you're interested in, you can get there. So building new relationships, like I said, is critical. But maintaining good relationships at all times is just as critical, because if you don't keep up with people, often you're reaching out to them and you don't realize they made a change. You don't realize what's going on. Sometimes that can be good. Sometimes that can be bad. So like I said, creating as many, opportunities for yourself to meet people, to say hello. And it was like you talked about, just that first impression of saying hello. You stay after you put a face, because when you walk up to somebody later and you say, well, I'm so-and-so, I saw you or met you or heard you speak at this, at least they have a connectivity point. Oh, well, you were in the audience where you were there. And like I said, after you build those relationships, maintaining them is just as critical. So be sure you maintain them. I take pride in this. I have a book in my office for the last 16 years. I have kept every business card like I was collecting baseball cards of anybody I've gotten. And a lot of those people aren't in those same jobs, but I can reference where they were or what they're doing. And at least if they have a cell phone number, nowadays we keep our cell phone numbers wherever we go. I have that information. And again, it's about it's more than 75 pages of business cards that over the last 16 years I've collected.
Little Rolodex. Well, and you made me think of a quick story that I'd like to share with the current students on the call. So I was mentoring a young girl that was in grad school and who's interested in going in sports business. And we were supposed to have these monthly calls and she'd come with an agenda. We'd talk through what she's working on, what her goals are, how I can help her get there, right? Because that is really the goal of a network, to grow a community of people that, 1, make you better, and 2, help you reach your goals. And you can hopefully return that favor. And eventually the calls fell off the calendar. She didn't bring agendas. I'm trying to run a massive portfolio of partnerships, and I don't necessarily can't read her mind about what she's trying to do, about what she wants to know. I could talk all day to her about whatever she would like, but I don't know what she needs. She needs to tell me that. And so our calls eventually fell off the calendar, and we stopped meeting. And this happened last year, and about 2 months ago, she reached out and asked if I'd recommend her for a job. And I can't see everybody on here, but I would imagine if I asked somebody to raise their hand if they thought I recommended her for the job, no one's hand would be up. Because during these relationships, you have the opportunity to showcase your skills, right? Time management, organization, care, right? I care enough to even follow up with you about scheduling a call or put the time in on the front end to create an agenda and tell you what my goals are so I can set you up to help me. And I think that's a key point. And it took me a little while to learn that. I don't know if everyone else feels the same way on the panel, but it took me a little while to figure out that I had to be a very active participant in my growth because my boss didn't know and can't read my mind about where I want to go and what I want to do. So I encourage you to think about those things too, because you will get asked, and don't be shy about telling people that. You know, if you don't share it, then you can't get there, and you can't have people help you get there. So all around, I think very, very helpful to chat through how you can maintain that network. And the other pieces that we touched on a little bit, we may get into a little bit later, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but I believe Chris mentioned this when he said, you know, have a reference point, have a connection point to come prepared to the conversation. And I don't want to get into that too much. Again, I don't want to ruin what we have set for a little bit later, but just start to think about that as we chat through some of these questions. And then Chris, I'd like to call on you a little bit for this. So you mentioned how large the NJCAA is, and you oversee over 500 schools in the association. So I imagine you have a very, very massive internal network. You know, we've talked a lot about connecting people outside of where you work. So I'd like to shift the conversation a little bit to connecting with your peers and connecting with people inside the network. So if you could rewind to, I believe it was just over 3 years ago that you took this role, is that right? How did you go about building all of these internal relationships with such a large number of people?
First and foremost, I'm probably a people person. My wife will tell you I like to talk too much to people rather than to her. Just like I said, just that friendly face of connecting the dots and trying to remember as much stuff as possible. But again, where you know people and where you connect, for me, the NJCAA, again, national organization, I have to be on point when I'm talking to somebody to know exactly what part of the country they're in, how things are going, how things are affected differently. You know, COVID is a perfect example. You know, when the COVID outbreak hit, you know, I had a school in Rochelle, New York. That was the heart of COVID-19. And we were in the middle of trying to get them to a national basketball tournament. Well, you know, you get the calls and you're getting, you know, fussed at from Texas because Texas wants to make sure that the national championship is going to go on, and you're trying to explain to them the differences in, you know, participation in Texas, you know, March the 10th versus participation in Rochelle, New York. And again, just maintaining those relationships and staying the course of, I tell everybody I got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So if I listen twice as much as I speak, when it comes to many of those things, it can get you places. But like I said, that respect factor of earning respect for an internal network is probably the most significant thing you can take away. Is if you want to, you know, you got to give respect to earn respect. So when I'm dealing with these people all over the country, first and foremost, I want to show them the respect and expect the respect back. And then when, you know, those things move forward, we're all in it together. And again, you remember those significance. You remember things that happened and where they happened and why they happened, to connect the dots over and over again. Because again, at any given moment, I'm calling on people in 25 different places around the country. That's not easy, but at the same time, it's rewarding. But it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of, like I said, that respect factor both ways.
Sally or Brett, is there anything you'd like to add to building internal networks and internal relationships?
Yeah, I would just say it does. It takes work, right? Anything that you build takes, there's sweat equity behind it, right? I mean, I just got a card today from a colleague that wrote a handwritten 3-sentence note to me and dropped it in the mail, right? Just saying, hey, thank you for something. And, you know, so handwritten notes, taking that extra effort, and I noticed that his handwritten note had his own personal letterhead on it, right? So he took the time to go out and print his own personal letterhead and drop this note in the mail. Those are the type of things that they take work. They take thoughtfulness. I think we referenced being authentic, being kind. You'd be amazed at how few people do this stuff though, right? And so it's easy to shine and develop those relationships if you're willing to put the time in to do it, right? And I think true wealth, it's been said a lot, true wealth is not money, it's relationships. And if you prioritize and value relationships, And as you get deeper relationships, sending proactive texts and just, you know, on a Monday morning to say, hey, I'm thinking about you. I hope you have a great week. You know, rock and roll, let's get after it. Those type of things are important. I make sure I have 200 teammates that I work with in my region. I have their birthdays in my calendar. I just have them tagged in my calendar, and texting them happy birthday is a little extra effort that is a deposit to the relationship, right? And if I'm going to ask my teammates to go all in with me to drive revenue numbers up at their respective universities, I think I'll get a little extra out of them if I care enough to write them a handwritten note or remember their birthday, or ask how they're doing on something that's important to them, right? So relationships, it's everything.
100%. And, oh, sorry, Chris, go ahead, please.
He made a good point about the birthdays. Like you said, those little touches, when you separate yourself from the crowd, especially in the job market, and you remember those little touches, they'll remember you. So when you make those little notes, I promise you, they're worth the time and the effort. Like he just said, people will remember those things and they will appreciate those things. And when you're in a situation like you are now, it may be the difference in you getting a job or not having a job.
100%. And I would encourage you to all use this to your favor. You can keep everything in here. I don't know if you guys have played around with the contacts in your phone, but there is an option to put spouses' names, birthdays, notes, addresses, and I keep everything in there. So I have it at my fingertips if I need it. Get calendar alerts for people's birthdays. So we all live and die by this already. So I encourage you to keep using it to your advantage, and see how that can help you keep in touch with people. And I think, Saul, you made a great point. I had a friend of mine in the sports industry. She knows that we're kind of crazy right now in football season, you know, kicking off in COVID, and we have 3 home games in a row. And she took the time to send me like a little $5 little gift, and it was with a note that's just like, hey, keep it up. I know it's tough right now, but you're killing it. And it's like, that stuff goes such a long way because it helps build that genuine relationship. And I think the key word that everyone's heard so far in all of these remarks is genuine and authentic, right? So I would say keep in mind too, you know, if you get an introduction to somebody to help build your network and it's not a good personality fit, that's okay. You're not going to hit it off with everybody. If you had a network of everybody you were introduced to, you wouldn't be able to maintain it. So holding on to those really authentic and genuine relationships, like Sally and I hit it off right away. I know we're going to stay connected for a long time. So it's just keeping up with those and holding on to the ones that really are meaningful and that feel genuine, authentic. They pass the lunch test. So if you want to go to lunch with them, then it's probably a relationship worth maintaining and keep growing for sure. So I have another question for all of you, Brett, Chris, and Solly. It's around the question and answer, so we're going to head into that a little bit. Solly, you were with, I'll start with you, but because you were with Learfield IMG, and correct me if I'm wrong, at some point in the past, and then you left for a little bit and came back. So talk to us a little bit about how relationships, if they did, played a key role in you coming back to the same organization.
You have to value and when you do good work and prioritize relationships, you'll appreciate them as you advance in your career, how important they are, because they come full circle, right? And now I've made mistakes in relationships, and I've damaged relationships that were really important to me, and made some decisions that compromise those relationships. And when you do that, I think, and it hurts a little bit, you reassess and reflect on how you can do better, right? And nothing like a little humility and understanding that I think that's just as valuable, right? So I've been fortunate to have a good platform of relationships and have learned from a lot of people on how to develop those and maintain them. But I've also made some massive mistakes. And I think those are just as important. When you do make those mistakes, reflect on what you did. And that reflection can be painful because it really, it goes deep. Right? And whether it's on your personal side or whether it's on the professional side, if you make that mistake, vow that you won't do it again or repeat it or have a pattern of doing something that continues that damage. And because you need those relationships to progress in your career. And I just think it's important to learn as you advance and make sure you're doing it the right way.
It's a great point. And actually, I'm going to pivot really quick because I think we just got a great question in the chat that's very relevant to what we're talking about. And it's how to handle failure in general and in your career. And it's a loaded question. I'm sure we've all fell flat on our face multiple times with something we thought was foolproof and it wasn't. And I'll say just really quickly, I was reading a book that actually a couple of my friends had written, and there's this sentiment in the book, and they're pit crew coaches, right? And that's of a NASCAR team. And they're talking about the tire changers. So whenever you see on pit road, the guys who have the tire changing gun, and they take off the lug nuts and put them on. So that requires a lot of attention to detail. You can't skip one. If you skip one, the team gets fined. If one falls off, the team gets fined. The driver could get seriously hurt. So very, very high pressure job. And when they're practicing, and if somebody misses one and they're beating up on themselves, they always use the term like fail forward. Like, hey, realize you made a mistake and move on and use it to get better. So when you are failing, just make sure you are going in a forward motion and not beating up on yourself going backwards, because guess what? The next round that team did in practice, he hit every single lug nut. And if he didn't have the support of his coaches to keep moving forward, learn from it and grow, he may have missed it for the next three, right? So I would say, great question, heavy question, loaded question, but I would say just use it for your advantage and keep moving forward. Guys, do you have anything to add to that on how to handle failure?
I'll jump in here. It's interesting. I just read a book about failure called Black Box Thinking. And so it's a book that talks about the black box in an airplane, right? And it records all this information and you use it when a failure happens, when a plane crashes. It's kind of a morbid scenario or analogy, but they take the black box and they learn from it, right? They're talking about failing forward, but they learn from it, they analyze it and make sure it doesn't happen again, or put in procedures, policies, and processes. But a big culture thing with that is that they value failure. They value the information and the learnings behind it. Failure, and they go on to say failure needs to be destigmatized a little bit. Failure isn't a bad word. Failing isn't necessarily inherently bad as most people think it is. You didn't succeed at something, but why didn't you succeed? What could you have done better? How can you debrief about it? How can you talk about it with mentors, bosses, and friends? And how can you hold yourself accountable on the next time to try it again? So, and in sales, we fail a lot, right? And from a sponsorship standpoint, sponsorship sales standpoint, we live in a world of rejection. We live in a world of no's. We live in a world of ghosting and non-response. So you get thick skin on it, and it makes you appreciate those successes really well. But at the same time, okay, we didn't win this deal. Why? What could we have done differently? And that will lead to the next deal, right? You just get better.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Learn from every failure. If you don't learn from it, you haven't really failed. I mean, you have to take something away from it every time. And if you're willing to do that in your own critical way of how you make yourself better, I promise you'll come out better every time.
Yeah, just to add, I'll share a quick story that when I was at UC Berkeley, I had to, with our athletic director, handle the firing of the the football staff. We were making a change, and I didn't handle it the right way, right? So I did not handle that process with the compassion that was needed, and kind of stuck to a HR script and did a poor job at letting that football staff go. And I'll tell you, the way I did it, it cost me an athletic director job at Fresno State, because one of the football coaches shared that with the president. So, and that hurt deep, right? And that's kind of one of those reflection points. And then just recently, the CEO of our company asked me if I would, we have a position change that we need to make. And he asked, hey, can you handle this? You do a really good job with these conversations, and you handle them with such compassion, right? And I told my wife, it was like, it kind of came full circle. I learned the hard way on how to handle a very difficult situation much better. And I failed, and I hurt some people in the process. And to that point, I grew as a person, and vowed I would never, ever be in a position where I wouldn't handle a position change without prioritizing that person in compassion and empathy as my priorities in that conversation. And so I share that with you because that's part of the learning and growing process.
No, I appreciate you sharing that story. And I think we can all relate to a time in our careers like that, that helped develop some of the most important pillars for us as human beings and professionals. And that's sometimes how we really nail those down and narrow down what's important to us, on how we want to be and how we want others to see us and experience us. Because, everything, it's a small world in athletics and sports, believe it or not. Thank you for sharing that. I think it was very helpful. And then I'd like to move on to the next question. I think this is a very important topic, especially with the world that we're living in. And that's around email etiquette. So I think that's something, I see Chris that's taking a big breath right now, but I think that's something that we can all agree we may not have maybe known unless somebody told us how exactly to proceed with email introductions, or just your regular old emails to prospects or prospective employers for the students on this call. So I would like to turn it over to the panel just to talk a little bit about experience and any advice they have. And Chris, I think that this topic is calling you to be the first.
It's all about first know your audience. Who you're emailing, what you're emailing for, and why. So if you're emailing a professor, don't send a text message and an email. Email your professor because you're probably asking for something. But if you're emailing a future employer, the same applies. Email it in a professional way so that you're hoping to get that respect factor that we talked about earlier. You show respect, you get respect back. Because again, people, I promise you, this goes a step further. Your social media accounts, the first thing I do before I hire somebody is I go look at all their social media accounts. And I'm not interested in what their political views or anything like that are. I'm interested to see how they write, how they type, what they're engaging in as far as the sports world, as far as civility and things like that. So knowing your audience before you send an email is absolutely crucial. Because again, it goes back to that respect factor. And for me, that's something that I've tried to push more and more the last few years when sending an email. Take your time, address it properly. If you're sending it to a friend, nobody cares. But if you're sending it to somebody of a stature that you're asking for something, you better address it right. Check it twice. Don't just press send because you're in a hurry. Evaluate it very closely before pressing that send button. Because once you press send, it's not coming back. There's no magic eraser to take it back. The first impression we talked about earlier, that first impression can be an email, and you've got that one chance.
I think some emails where I maybe didn't proofread still haunt me from my younger days. So I think it's a great point. Brett, Feel free to weigh in on this topic.
Yeah, no, I just brought back like nightmares of emails or proposals I've sent before with misspelled words or different ways. And I learned pretty quickly, right? It goes back to failure and learning on the differences on what you could have done. But some email etiquette, a little more tactical, I think. But like I've seen some students, interns, start with dear and dear Mr. Baur. I'm very much, and I think kind of universal is hi, hello, good morning, good afternoon. But dear, sometimes I just don't necessarily. I always think it's the most appropriate. And the sign off on whatever your sign off is it cheers? Is it warm regards? Is it thanks? Is it something a little more personal? Just be cognizant of how you sign off, because knowing your audience, your sign offs are going to be a little bit different. And then just some other things. If you're sending anything, a document through email, PDF, 100% of the time. Word docs, PowerPoints, no. Excels, no. That means it can be edited, and especially if it's a format. And think about your resume. I've gotten tons of resumes from college kids and interns and docs, and we might have different formatting setting. I might not have your font. You might not have my font, whatever. And then it gets screwed up, and then it looks unprofessional. Everything you send through, unless you want that other person to edit it, go through PDF. So again, very tactical on some of these stuff, but just be cognizant of. The other one that it took me a little while to get out of, but starting every email with "I hope all is well" and kind of some filler things, it jumps out at you. And especially if you're creating personal connections with them, talk about something in their life, talk about something what's going on, or if you're meeting them for the first time, share how excited you are to talk to them, or share how excited you are to connect with them. Just make it human, make it authentic, and make it a lot of the things we've talked about today. But I think those are some of the few things that I talk to students about regularly on.
Yeah, I would just add brevity is, go ahead, Chris.
Now, I'll give a couple of quick examples. I get emails like he was talking about, that people are mass sending their resume and they don't change it to Dr. Parker or Mr. Parker or anything like that. And it says Dr. Emmerich, NCAA. And I'm like, you just sent me an email. You thought you were sent to the NCAA. They spell NJCAA wrong, NCJAA rather than NJCAA. If I get those, I do not even open them. I press delete before I ever even open them. So again, like you talked about, that detail, it really does matter.
I would just add, pay attention to your header. Pay attention, brevity is important. When you get an email that's 5 paragraphs long, it's hard to read through that, right? And so it's important to be concise. I also, just a pet peeve of mine is when there's not a signature, an email signature, and if I want to call that person, having their phone number below their sign off on their email signatures is important for me, because I can read the email, and if I want to call them, I can call them right there, right? I don't have to search and look for their phone number. And so that's just a little piece of advice as far as being accessible. And so I think that's important too.
Yeah, I share the same pet peeve, Sally. Brett, go ahead.
Yeah, just one more to kind of connect the start of this conversation and relationships and networking into the email etiquette. If someone introduces you through email, I like to have a 24-hour rule that I would like to typically do it in an hour or two, depending on my day. But I try to get back to that person if I'm introduced to somebody immediately, because that person, back to what you said, Michelle, just went out on a lib to introduce you for whatever reason or the purpose. You want to make that person look good. You want to be very prompt on your delivery. So I've gotten people and students been introduced to me, and it'll be a week later when they'll finally get back to me. Like we're all trying to help you out, but just be cognizant of the delay. And when you get introduced, make it a priority to at least get that next email out and further the discussion.
100%. You took the words right out of my mouth. It is so important to respond right away. And I remember when I just got out of grad school, and Brian Gaynor, a graduate from our program, had introduced me to somebody, and he said, make sure I am about to send this email, respond right away. And that was when somebody for the first time had told me that that was important. I probably, did it because just, you're in grad school, you're always on your email, you're on your computer. But when it was explicitly told to me, I was like, okay, if this is important to him, this is important to the person he's sending the email to, it's probably important to a lot of other people, just to show that this is like Brett, you said, a priority, and how important it is to you. You could be doing a bunch of other things. We're all connected again on here. You have your email on your phone, and make sure you set up your signature on your email on your phone, so it doesn't say sending from Outlook or whatever it might say. So I think those are great points. And, I'm actually interested to hear what you all think about this. Heather had submitted a question. How do you guys feel about look forward to hearing from you soon? Do you have any strong feelings about that sign off? Do you think it's presumptuous? Do you think it's okay to add?
I think it's acceptable. It shows a little confidence, and again, it's all about the body of the email, how you presented it, and then look forward to hearing from you soon. I think that's perfectly fine. I see that as ambitious and that type of thing in my role is how I see it.
I would agree. Yeah, I think Heather, you use that if you'd like, and feel free to change it up too. And like Brett said, make it personal. So I think it was a good question though, and this is certainly the platform to ask those types of questions. We're very transparent on this call. So if you have more questions like that, please do submit them. We're going to get to as many as we possibly can. And so Chris, you said something earlier when you were talking about social media channels, the first thing you guys look at for a potential hire. Talk a little bit about the pros and cons of using social networks for networking. And what specifically comes to mind for me is Twitter and LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn, and I'll tell all of you, you can go to LinkedIn now, request to follow me, request to connect with me. I promise you somewhere down the line, I can help you. And if that's the kind of relationship you start, then I will do that no matter who you are or where you are. But she made a point about being thorough, having everything updated. Don't make it look like 5 years ago. As far as your Twitter is concerned, this is a big one for me. I only tweet anything that's relevant to my job. So mine is 100% professional Twitter account. But when I look at young people and I see what they're liking, what they're retweeting, we all can get a good chuckle out of Barstool Sports. But when all you do is go to Barstool and retweet and like, it begins to show a maturity factor of who you are and what you are. And people look at that. They're looking to see what those types of engagement pieces are. Are you offering something to the world through social media about who you are and have a point, or are you just sharing an open opinion that matters nothing? And again, these would vary greatly among employers and what you're doing in what field, but that's the way I evaluate it when I review it, because I want to see people that are taking things seriously. Because if you're going to operate my social media account for 500 colleges around the country, I better know I can trust you when it comes to that. And if you're doing something differently on your own account, then that trust isn't quite going to be there to start with.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point, and the panelists and probably some of the staff and faculty on this call have seen a very strong evolution of Twitter. I know I was always against making mine public, but when I started to look for jobs and really engage with sports content, I wanted to use it as a platform to show people in the industry and brands like what I stand for, what I care about. Sometimes I'll put pictures, of my dogs up there because I love them and they're a big part of my life. But a lot of it has to do with hashtags you're engaging with, like sports marketing hashtags, and following people also that you want to be in their position someday. I follow a lot of strong female sports executives to see how they respond to things, to see how they handle interviews, what they say in interviews. And if that provides me an opportunity to pull something from what they said for me to connect with them, I take that opportunity and then link it to LinkedIn and maybe try and make an introduction there. Brett, Solly, anything to add there on Twitter, LinkedIn?
Yeah, I have probably more personal stuff on my Twitter, but if you go to my Twitter, I'm very careful with it, right? Because it is part of your brand, right? And You think about Kanye West, you think about LeBron James, you think about Johnny Manziel, you think about Sarah Palin, they all have brands, right? And some are more polarizing than others. And those brands aren't created by accident. And I think just be intentional about what your digital footprint looks like, what your LinkedIn looks like, what your Twitter, your Instagram. People are looking, as Chris said, people are looking at that stuff and they're making snapshot judgments of you. And so, Michelle, I need to follow you on Twitter because it sounds like you got some cool dogs. I also think it's important to be authentic and bold as you and what speaks to you. I think that resonates with people. On my Twitter, I just posted a big moose that I saw up in Alaska when I was hiking with my parents. That was cool to me, right? So I'm going to put that out there. And Chris makes a great point on Barstool Sports. Just be careful about what you like. You see it in the media, and it has repercussions now more than ever.
Certainly does. And I can confirm that I do have 2 very cool dogs. So follow me on Twitter if you'd like to see them. They're adorable. Brett, anything to add on to that? I know we talked a little bit about your personal brand and whatnot, but any last minute thoughts on that?
Yeah, just on the LinkedIn piece, use it. The profile, having all of that is great, but use it. Share things. I think very easy things, and we try to teach interns and some students, try to share something once a week. If you're involved in the sports business world, you're seeing what industry news is, something excites you, something is new, it makes you think and have a different thought, and you want to share that. Put that out there and let your followers engage with it. And then as employers are coming in situations like this and they see activity of, oh my gosh, they're so in touch with the sports industry, they're having comments and thoughts around it, don't go for how many likes and engagements you get. Think about it as a brand building marketing platform on what you want to be known for and the expertise, and specifically drill down to the digital media. I want to be known for digital media. I want to be known for sales. I want to be known for marketing. I want to be known for finance and accounting, whatever the industry sector is within the broader sports business community. Share articles, go out and find things, reshare things from LinkedIn. I don't think I see enough young people use it correctly. Having a profile is one thing, but just actively using it can take it to another level in terms of the connection, the relationships built, and then what you can build your personal brand around.
Yeah, and like I said, a number of you just added me on LinkedIn. I've already accepted those, so like I said, feel free to do that. But don't be afraid. Like you said, a lot of you have your profile as student. That's what you are. You're a student. And when you're talking about what you're learning and what you're engaging for, what Brett said, that matters. People are looking for you to share what it is you're after, because the eagerness and that ambition, like I said, that's going to separate you. That passion is going to separate you from the crowd when it comes down to the last 3 candidates for a job. If you're all in the same line, so really, share that. Like I said, focus on that ambition and use it to your advantage. Like you said, every day you can share something. And again, if it's your dogs, that shows a side of you. What I don't want to see is, I don't want to see all of that negative stuff as far as nonsense that the world is looking at from its lens of, Barstool getting their next pizza. Instead, here's the sport industry growing women leaders in sports. That's a passion of yours. By golly, use it to a platform, because you're going to follow in those footsteps. And as administrators, as young professionals, and then as older professionals, our job is to educate you and make you better for the next generation that we couldn't do for ourselves.
100%. I think you all hit the nail on the head with that one. And we have some really good questions in the chat, but we are within our last minute of the panel. I don't know about you guys, but this flew by. I learned a lot. I hope you guys did too. But to close out, I want to do a really quick round robin. Brett, Chris, Solly, like 10 seconds or less. Biggest piece of advice that you can offer students that are embarking on the job hunt soon?
Get involved. Get involved, get involved, get involved. It doesn't matter. You have more time than you do money. So get involved with any aspect you can, because that's going to make a difference for you when you're standing in line you're all a student, you're coming out. Well, what did you do during your career as a student? Well, I just did nothing. Well, this person volunteered at these 3 places in the athletic department. You know, they called up Sully and got involved with some type of brand marketing. Unpaid. Everybody wants to get paid. You gotta pay your dues. You have to pay your dues. If you do that, you're gonna get ahead of the curve. So get involved. It doesn't require you get paid. It requires your time. Do that.
Yep, worked for free for a long time. Brett, what is your advice?
I think curiosity and taking initiative are the 2 biggest things you can do. They connect with each other if you're curious about things, and then take initiative to learn or within your own organization. But having the curiosity, showing you're curious, and showing you've taken initiative and gone above your role, whatever the role might be in a group, a project, an internship, to help an overall greater good or an overall greater common objective, those things go a really long way.
Excellent. Great call. And Solly, wrap us up here. What do you got?
Yeah, I would just say everyone on this has a huge advantage. Alaskans hustle, right? You're in fierce environment and you have an interesting story. And so I just say hustle. Nothing's below you, nothing's above you. Go out, be bold, and get it, right? I mean, take that action. That's been a common theme that we've talked about for this last hour. There's a big difference between the people that think about it and the people that do it. So be a doer.
I love that. Well, thank you guys so much. We are 1 minute over, so I apologize, but so much great information. Make sure you save the date at 10/29. I did see a question in here about diversity and inclusion. The next seminar will be Sport for Social Change. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. Tune in. Brett, Chris, Solly, thank you so much for joining us and lending us your expertise and your time. I had a great time. I hope you all did too. Thank you guys for joining. I put my email in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and add us all on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you, guys. See ya.